Hello and welcome to the Ally Invest Daily Service Show. Today on our show, our theme is IRA accounts. We have Matt Weston with us, who is the head of product for Ally Invest. But first, Matt, we have a few questions from the comment section of last week's show. So let's start off by addressing those. Okay, so our very first question comes from Fire MIP Spy. How do you see your documents in the mobile app, like trade confirmations, statements, etc.?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Brian, for the question. And as always, feel free to ask away throughout the show. That's what we're here for. I will say that in the mobile app right now, you actually would not see those forms. So if you're looking for them, you're going to want to look elsewhere. If you have access to your desktop or using your browser on your mobile phone, you can actually go into your account and log in that way, which would allow you to view your statements there. So they're not in the mobile app, but you can find them by going to the full website or logging in through mobile web using the browser on your smartphone.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to do more with mobile on this show. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the actual website, but without a doubt, we're going to dive into the mobile app much more going forward. So we got another great question that had to go along with the theme from last week, Matt. Can a good till canceled order, a GTC order, be filled in the pre or post market, or is it only visible during market hours, actual market hours?
Yep, another great question. So I'd say the way that our good till canceled orders work currently is that they're good for the regular trading sessions. So from 9:30 until 4 p.m. Eastern time, you're able to place a good till cancel order, and we're working that order with our market partners. So during those times, those orders are live. If you do want to place an order for the pre-market session from 8 until 9:30 a.m. or the post-market from what we call 4 to 5 p.m., you're able to do that, but those orders are only good for that session specifically. So if you do have a good till canceled order and you'd like to place something in the post-market, you'd want to cancel that order first and then go into the post-market session and place a trade specific for that session. So we don't actually work those orders during the pre and post-market session, just during market hours.
And you also want to pay attention when you're doing that on the website, because you want to make sure that it's saying post-market or pre-market hours. Sometimes you may make the mistake. We've had this happen where clients have gone in and thought they were entering an order in the post-market, but it was actually for the normal market or normal market hours, which are our Eastern time, which Matt was talking about. So you always want to be cognizant of what the top of the screen is saying you pre, post, or regular market hours in general. All right, we got another great question that goes along with the theme that we had before, Matt. I was thinking about opening a Roth IRA investment account, which is kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And I started the process and it wanted me to choose between a Roth investment account and a Roth beneficiary investment account. What's the difference, Matt?
Yeah, another great question. And Brian, you bring up a good point. Customers often have questions about what type of IRA should I open? It's definitely something you want to take the time and research and even consult a tax professional if you want to. And I will say this applies to the whole show. We are talking about IRAs, but you always want to make sure when it comes to the different types of accounts that you're opening, especially those that may or may not have different tax consequences, that you're always working with a tax professional or thoroughly researching it so that you understand your specific tax situation. So dependent upon what your objectives are and what kind of account is best suited for you, you need to really do that research to make those decisions. So the difference between those types of accounts is if you're looking to open a Roth IRA with us, you can do that. A Roth IRA is a type of account where you're taking money that has already been taxed that you already have, and then making contributions into a Roth IRA. You would do this in instances where you potentially want to contribute money that's already been taxed, and you can do that, and then it can grow without any tax consequence, and that's part of the benefit of that type of account. But you need to be aware that there are certain income limits, so not everyone can open that type of account. So again, you need to research it and understand your specific tax situation. If you earn over a certain amount, you can't make contributions to your Roth IRA. But really, it's a more of a tax sheltered account where assets can grow and you don't have to be taxed on them, which is different than a taxable brokerage account. And again, you can make contributions to that account, and we support, and you can open them here. A beneficiary Roth is a different situation where if the account owner has been deceased or passed away, if you are the beneficiary of that Roth, you can actually take possession of those funds as part of opening an IRA. You name beneficiaries, and in the event that the account holder passes away, that those assets then pass on to that beneficiary. We support those accounts. They can't be opened online. They do require you to complete a paper form with us, which you can contact us about if you need to do that, and we can get you to the right account opening form. And we do support holding those accounts, just not opening them online. So if you are in a situation where you have inherited a Roth IRA and you're the beneficiary, you want to open a beneficiary Roth IRA, and you do that by contacting us first and then submitting the paperwork in order to open that type of account.
Well, that's excellent. Yeah, I've often even wondered exactly what the beneficiary account is. So great answer, man. I do appreciate that too. And one of the biggest things, the biggest difference about a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA, which you hear so much about, is the fact that any capital gains or losses overall are not taxed inside the Roth IRA when you take out and take a contribution. In a regular IRA, those dollars have not been taxed. So any contributions that you make to it, you can remove from your actual tax consequences. But when you take out a distribution, you will then be taxed on later on. So you definitely, as Matt has highlighted, and we're going to talk a lot about on the show today, IRA accounts, those are two very important distinctions between the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA account. All right, Matt, I got one last question here, and I think I'm going to address this one from the comment section. Now, ultimately, you are the driver of the show and the content of this show. So please start putting your answers in the chat box. We'll highlight a couple of things in the IRA accounts and some of the other features you want to think about. But from last week's show, we talked a little bit about trading and how to enter an order on the mobile app. And part of that, when we're doing the mobile order entry, we saw a couple of things that said sell short and buy to cover. And so this question comes from Mrs. H, and Mrs. H says, what is a sell short and buy to cover? And I'll address that one a little bit, Matt. And just in general, when I'm looking at order entry, a lot of times you'll have things that will pop up that don't get used very often in the general beginning order entry process. And these are two of those terms. They're important terms, and a lot of people that trade them are usually more advanced traders. When I'm selling short, that means that I'm selling a stock without owning it. Why would I do that? Well, because I think the stock is going to go down. So the concept on a sell short is I sell first, I hope the stock goes down, then I buy it back later, hence making a profit. So it's a way to be bearish on a particular stock. And we had a lot of short sellers on a lot of different stocks recently. It's been a very hot topic because of everything that's been going on with all the Reddit news and everything to go along with that. So the concept of a sell, if when you see in that order entry, a sell short, that means that I'm selling the stock without owning it. And then when I see buy to cover, that means that I'm not buying to buy actual shares. I'm buying to cover my short position. So you can go in a little bit more detail, but in general, if you're just a normal investor that likes to buy and hold stocks, these two terms really don't affect you very much, but it's obviously important to know exactly what they mean inside the mobile trading app. And you'll also see them on the live trading platform. All right. So once again, you are the driver of the content on this show. So if you have your questions, please make sure that you put them in the chat box. And I have to let you know that please don't put any personal account information inside the chat box. We can only answer general questions about the platform. And we're doing this because we have this open platform and we just want to make sure that your account information is secure and safe. And we want to address as many questions as we can via that chat box. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to pass it back to Matt and I'll let him address some of the highlights and details of IRA accounts within Ally Invest.
Sure thing. Thanks, Brian, again. And that's a great answer about short selling A lot of customers do have questions about that. So it's great to get those kinds of questions coming in. Also, as Brian said, if you have questions, ask away. We'll see how good I can do at trying to answer anything that you have questions about with your Ally Invest account. So if you look, I can show you on our website. First, I'd like to start as we're waiting for any questions to come in, and I can show you where you would go to open a retirement account at Ally Invest. Now, one of the things that I'll say is this can be confusing for customers because they're also on the Ally Bank side for opening a bank account. We do offer some products and services for CDs as well as money markets where you can open an IRA at the bank. You want to make sure for what we're talking about today that you're opening an invest brokerage retirement account. And for those that is the vehicle that'll allow you to go and invest and trade in the stock market, either through your self-directed account. You can also open a managed account where through our robo-advisor right now, you can go and create a portfolio and allocate those positions out to that portfolio and do that within your IRA. So you have a lot of flexibility with a few different products. And the first point of confusion, kind of the question we had earlier, is really around not only what kind of IRAs can I open, but how and where do I open them on the Ally site? So what I've done is I've just gone to ally.com here. And if you go under investing and retirement, which would make sense, you can see a few choices on this menu. Again, there's some retirement things down here that we do to talk through a few different types of IRAs through here, and there's great information in there. But the first step, if you are wanting to open an IRA with us, is just choose from this menu which type you want to open. So if you want to open an account through our robo-advisor and have that investing happen on your behalf through our robo-advisor, you can do that by clicking on Manage Portfolios. Or if you have your own trading ideas and what we call a self-directed trading account, you can click here and open a self-directed trading account. And both of these links will show in a few minutes here what page that takes you to, but you have the ability from there to go and open an account and then establish whichever type of IRA you're looking to open through the website. But we'll talk more about that in a minute because it looks like we have a question coming in, so I'll pass it back to Brian.
Right, yeah, great spot to pause there. All right, so the first question that we have in the chat box says, "Hey, Ally, got a question. Does Ally have advisors to help transfer funds from a government TSP account to an IRA account in Ally? I don't want any tax issues. I'm not quite sure what a government TSP account is. Do you have a little bit of insight on that, Matt?"
I think it's a thrift savings plan,
Okay.
but you can always contact them to figure out how to distribute the assets. So this is a great question, and it actually kind of leads to where I was going to go just regarding opening an IRA account as well. One of the important things is you want to understand how those assets are being held. So if it's a thrift savings plan, or if you have a 401k, which is probably what we see most commonly, those assets can actually be moved into the account that you open here. So if you leave your employer or have stagnant 401ks out there, you can actually move them from your 401k or probably from your thrift savings plan, depending upon how it's structured. What you really want to understand is it done on a tax deferred basis, as Brian talked about earlier, which you'd see happen with your IRA account. If it's coming out pre-tax money, that's what I mean by tax deferred. So if it comes directly out of like your paycheck through the government or your employer ahead of time before tax, it's probably in what we'd consider like a traditional IRA or a tax deferred vehicle in that sense. If it's money that you take possession of, or if you can even do it through your employer still for a Roth, but if it gets taxed before it goes in there, it's probably held in a Roth. So you want to make that's a really important distinction. So I would contact them. You can always ask those details without knowing any of the specifics about your situation, but it's best to reach out to whoever that plan administrator is. And this applies not only for a TSP, but also your 401k or 403b or whatever that vehicle is. There's plenty of acronyms out there. You want to just go, and it's easiest to contact your plan administrator. So either your employer or your statements will have a plan administrator listed on there, and you can ask them these questions. If you say, is this a tax deferred account? Is it being held as a Roth or is it a traditional? They can answer those questions. Once you know the answer to that, you want to open a corresponding account type at Ally Invest. So if you want to open an account with us and then either make your own investment decisions and move those assets over here, you can do that. Just find out which type it is. And then as I was going through the account opening flow, you would choose that account type, either it be a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And you can open both of those right through the website. And once you've done that, you could then go back to your plan administrator, provide your account information here for the account that you just established, and they will give you their instructions to move that money over penalty-free, in the sense that you're not taking possession of it yet. So you likely will not have any sort of tax consequence of any time by doing this. And you can move any of your old 401ks or whichever type of savings plan they're in into your brokerage account and either trade it yourself or, again, use our managed accounts through our robo-advisor and have them invest it for you.
Right. And the key here is what Matt said, is the not taking possession of the funds. If you're going from institution to institution, that's the key to make sure that you do not receive tax consequences in the process of rolling, and that's what I would call this, rolling your retirement funds from a previous job. And Matt mentioned all the different names for previous job. This was a new one to me, the TSP account. And then moving it into a tax deferred account like an IRA account, or where if you do a Roth account, you may have tax consequences. So you want to make sure that you decide what the correct account type will be. But the biggest thing is that the funds never come in your possession overall. All right. Well, that's it for the questions right now. Please put them in the chat box. You are the driver of the content today. Matt, you were on a roll talking about IRAs, so I'm going to pass it back to you, and let's see ally.com again.
I hope that was no pun intended, because that's bad. That's bad if that's... That
was a bad one.
You're making me lose my train of thought with the pun.
Self-directed trading and managed portfolios. That's where we were.
So I'm just going to choose self-directed trading. And this is, again, just showing you all the different offerings that we have here at Ally Invest. And what you can do is you can read a lot about the platform, see some information here. When you've made the decision that you're ready to open the account, and in this case, we're talking about IRA accounts, you can see there's a lot of information on the page that we make available to you. You can choose and click on any of these start trading buttons that you see just above me right up here. And if you click on that, that's actually going to take you into our account application. And there's one important step. I'm not going to go through this entire application that you're going to see, where you can just put in information like, nothing in there that's a compliance problem, I'm sure. Just a big fan of Ally and how I fill out my application. But once you register, this is actually the really important step. So when you get to here on your account, you can choose the account type. So when we talk about account type, this is exactly what I'm saying, where you need to choose the right type of brokerage account that you want to open and use. So when you see this choice, you see there's IRA right here. And if you click that radio button on the screen, you can also tap this. This is accessible through the mobile app. So we've talked about features and functionality that are available on mobile or not available. You can open this account right from the mobile application. And I will say, if you already have an Ally bank account or already have an existing Ally brokerage account, we pre-populate a lot of the information based upon what we know about you to help make the application experience shorter. So if you have a brokerage account, it's a few quick taps. If you have a bank account, it's just a few additional fields that we need to get the account open. So it's really straightforward and simple, and you can have that account open in just a matter of minutes. It's so easy to do. But if I click IRA, you'll see this expands a few choices, and now you'll see exactly what we're talking about. And I just wanted to highlight one thing here before we move forward, is that you have the choice of a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, or a rollover IRA. And if you're on the web experience from your desktop, you can actually hover over each of these and get information similar to what Brian and I have both been sharing on this session about what those different types of IRAs are. I will tell you there's really no difference anymore between a traditional IRA or a rollover IRA. They're essentially the same kind of vehicle. They're both tax deferred types of accounts. But if you do have an existing, to the example we talked about earlier, if you do have an existing 401k or TSP or whichever type of account, you'd want to go ahead and open a rollover IRA as long as it's being held as tax deferred. If it is a Roth, which you can do through a lot of employer accounts and other things, you'd want to go ahead and open a Roth IRA here. So you'd want to choose one of those two types, dependent upon the type of account that you were going to move over. And then if you click on that and hit next, you would continue through the application process. And then we just collect whatever information we still need from you, depending upon what type of customer you are. And then once that's done, you can take all of that information upon your account being approved and provide that to your plan administrator or otherwise enroll those assets over to Ally Invest and start trading, or have them invested into your managed account, and then we automatically invest them into whatever type of portfolio you've chosen.
Excellent. All right. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box right now. If not, Matt, I guess we'll just keep chugging along with maybe a little bit of talk. What would be a rollover IRA versus a traditional, and how are they handled after the fact?
Yeah, good question, Brian. They're the same. So you could really open either. So as far as when you say how are they handled, there's essentially no difference in how they're handled. They're both tax deferred. There was a time and a place before I was born when there was a difference. So I don't even remember the differences at this point. They're treated the same for the entirety of my career in brokerage. So you can actually choose either. So even if you make a mistake, do it between those two types. They're treated the same way and have the same type of tax consequence and otherwise. It's really just now more industry lingo than anything else.
Right. So if you go back to it, I guess the concept was a lot of people are like, well, I left my job. I am going to roll over my IRA. Can I do that? And this is where my concern comes in when you're right, it's just industry lingo. Can I do that into my traditional IRA that I already have set up? And the answer is, yeah, you can. It's really not that big of a deal. They just put that one word in front of IRA, but an IRA is an IRA in general. So the fact that it's a traditional versus a rollover doesn't really matter after the fact. So if I've had an IRA account for like 10 years and I leave my job and now I want to transfer my 401k into that IRA, no problem. Just do it into the IRA that you have on file. Don't worry about the fact that it doesn't have the word rollover in front of it to highlight that.
Yeah. And I did want to mention too, Brian, while we're talking about some of these things, we did have a question last week about doing a more complex, not that it's really complex, but a different type of transfer where it's called a Roth conversion. So one of our customers had asked, like, how do I do a Roth conversion? We do get requests for this and we do support it. And what this really essentially means is you want to take money that exists within your traditional or rollover IRA and convert it over to a Roth. So that's where the term comes from. We don't get a ton of requests for those, but we do support it. And I will say, if that person is listening or is out there or anyone else is looking to do this, we do support it. You'd want to contact our team first, and there's a specific form that we provide to you. And by completing that form, we can effectively move those assets over. And again, for everyone else listening, make sure you do your homework. Make sure you talk to your tax advisor. There can and probably will be tax consequence with doing so. So you want to make sure to take those steps first. And then someone else had asked Brian as well about what kind of tax forms will this generate. There's two specific forms that I think are worth touching on. One, you would get a 1099-R. I know this is probably going to bore everyone to death, like stereo instructions, but you would get a 1099-R, which is a tax form that we're required to provide to you whenever you take a distribution from an IRA. And a distribution really is defined as any time you're taking money out of any type of IRA, it's considered a distribution, except for the direct conversion situation we talked about last time. Even then, in some instances, your plan administrator or otherwise may provide you with this form, but it more or less shows the money leaving one type of IRA. And then there's a different form, because IRS loves these numbers, called a 5498, that you get that shows your contributions. That's not required in any way for tax reporting. It actually comes out well after the tax deadline, but you have a full paper trail in that example of money leaving. Say you were to do the Roth conversion, you have a full paper trail of that money going from your traditional IRA over to the Roth IRA between these two forms. So you'd have the 1099-R where the money came out of, which is going to be your traditional or rollover IRA. And then you'd get later on a 5498, which shows your contributions into the Roth IRA. And these are all forms that we're required to provide through IRS guidelines. So again, I just wanted to address a few of the other questions that had come up last week.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess we're coming to the end of the show. If you have any questions, put them on in the chat box. We got time for a couple of more, but we only have a few more minutes left here in the daily customer service show for Ally Invest. All right. I have one last question here. I guess we'll make this one the last one today, Matt. Kids and Cars, back again, I guess, says, what's the last date to make a contribution for 2020? I'll pass that one back to you, but that is a good question because the date has changed from last year.
Yeah, and it seems like each year it keeps changing. The rule of thumb with it for Kids for Cars and Brian and everyone else is whatever your filing deadline is, that's your time to get in any catch up or previous year contributions into your IRA. So if you're eligible to make contributions to your IRA, you can do that up until your filing deadline for the tax year. So for example, this year, the IRS has already extended to May 17th. That would apply to most individuals. So you have up until that date to get in your 2020 IRA contribution. So you're able to continue to make a previous year contribution to either your Roth or traditional or rollover IRA up until that specific deadline.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for another edition of the Ally Invest Daily Customer Service Show. Please make sure you click subscribe and you ring the bell. We'll be back this coming up Monday for the next daily service show. So get your questions ready and we'll see if we can address them on the show. And with that said, I'll pass it back to Matt to say, see you later and thanks for coming, everyone.
Yeah, and ring the bell.